The PlayStation 5 is one of the best gaming consoles ever made. Since its release in November 2020, it has been a go-to staple for any console gamer, and for good reason. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic severely slowed down PS5 production, so many gamers couldn't upgrade their PlayStation consoles without buying one from a reseller. Because of all the delays in PS5 production, many games originally set to be exclusives ended up on the PS4. That said, there aren't many PS5 exclusives currently out. PlayStation has only recently started releasing games that aren't compatible with the PS4. Some of the best PS5 games out there might also be available on an older console, but these titles were made with the power of the current-gen consoles in mind. Final Fantasy XVI is an action role-playing video game that follows protagonist Clive Rosfield. The game takes place in Valicia, a pair of continents divided into 6 nations. Clive is one of the survivors of his kingdom's destruction, and this crucial event pushes him into the folds of war spreading across Valicia in the wake of a force described as a magical drought. Final Fantasy XVI received high praise for its story, music, gameplay, and striking presentation in this deeply laid high fantasy world. Final Fantasy XVI famously changed the gameplay to a Devil May Cry-like combat system. However, it does so with style while retaining much of the atmosphere and storytelling conventions that made the franchise so beloved. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is the third installment in the Insomniac Games Spider-Man series and serves as a compelling direct sequel to the 2018 game. Following the events of Spider-Man and Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2 tells the story from Peter Parker and Miles Morales' perspectives. The game allows players to control both heroes while facing off against Kraven, Venom, and several other iconic supervillains. Very few games can match the mobility and power that the Insomniac Spider-Man games achieve. Unfortunately, where Spider-Man 2 fell short was the story. While the game looks superb and is engaging to play, the plot is somewhat convoluted, which turned some fans off. Demon's Souls 2020 is a remake of the famously difficult action role-playing video game of the same name. When the remake was announced, it was advertised as one of the earliest PS5 exclusives to help showcase what the new console was capable of. Fans of the original game were immediately interested in the remake. Upon release, many critics and gamers called it one of the most faithful video game remakes that had ever been made. The remake features the same dark fantasy story and general gameplay as the original, but with modern mechanics and new weapons, armor, and other equipment the player can work on. Demon's Souls also added several quality of life improvements that made the encumbered status more realistic. This includes giving players the option to send items to Stockpile Thomas for resource management. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a third-person shooter platform video game, and it's the 9th main game in the long-running series. It's a great installment to the Ratchet and Clank series, and one of the best games available for the PlayStation 5. Rift Apart is the sequel to Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus, and it picks up a little while after the conclusion of the 2013 installment. Ratchet and Clank attend a parade where they're honored as galactic heroes. During the parade, Clank tells Ratchet that he fixed the Dimensionator for him to continue his search for his family. Unfortunately, the surprise is ruined by an ambush, which results in the Dimensionator opening up countless portals to other dimensions. Rift Apart was a fun and responsive shooter, and traversal mechanics were bolstered by stunning art direction and level design. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is a re-release of the incredible 2020 action-adventure game. The Director's Cut includes the Director's Cut version of Ghost of Tsushima's main story, the Director's Commentary, and the Iki Island expansion alongside several other bonuses. It also aimed to enhance the game specifically for the PlayStation 5. While the Director's Cut is available on the PS4, it is notably a better experience on the newest console, the Pa Kaleni's phone. In Ghost of Tsushima, gamers play as the samurai Jin Sakai. He is tasked with protecting Tsushima Island, no matter the cost. The game takes place during the first Mongol invasion of Japan. The game is mostly open world and allows players to choose how to play. Jin constantly has to choose between upholding his honor as a warrior and using any means necessary to protect his people. Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic game, and it'll be interesting to see how Ghost of Yotei can top it. Rise of the Ronin is an action role-playing video game that allows players to make a custom character. The combat focuses on weaponry that would have existed during the Boshin War, commonly known in history books as the Japanese Revolution or Japanese Civil War. This allows players to use katanas and era-appropriate guns. Like many RPGs, Rise of the Ronin lets players make critical choices that impact how the story plays out, and if you weren't aware, you probably ought one of them by now because it was like the biggest game change for my college career, actually. So Rise, the character the player creates is one of the Blade twins. The player decides the character's gender and other features, but the protagonist does have a canon backstory. This leads the Blade twins to join the Veiled Edge Resistance, where they train and develop their skills. Their ultimate goal is to destroy the shogunate's hold on Japan, which sets up the events that will inevitably lead to the Boshin War. Helldivers 2 took the internet by storm upon its release. The first game was released in 2015, but the sequel brought in droves of new players. Players must work together to stop evil forces in Helldivers canon from taking over the galaxy. Players will start on their own ship where they can access their armor, gear, and other customization features. Then it's time to squad up and go fight for freedom among other brothers and sisters in arms. The gameplay in Helldivers 2 is consistently exciting. Players will load up in their ships in up to teams of 4 and then land on the most chaotic battlefields imaginable. Helldivers 2 is also cinematic, with every death and victory feeling straight out of a war hero story. One of the game's biggest charms is the community, as the fans and developers treat the game as an actual, ongoing battle. Set in a futuristic world, Stellar Blade has players take control of the character Eve. After humans have been forced to retreat from a monstrous invasion, Eve and her team are sent to clean up. Gameplay-wise and story-wise, Stellar Blade is perfect for fans of Nier Automata, with its gameplay focusing on timing, parries, and counters. While some fans found parts of the game clunky, Stellar Blade is a terrific game overall. Stellar Blade has also been highly praised for its stunning visuals. The PS5 has introduced the capability for visual masterpieces in video games, so a pretty game is never a bad thing. The game also ensures the use of the haptic sensors on the PS5 controller. While not every player wants to feel their hands vibrate all the time or feel strain on their triggers, it adds a delightful immersive experience. Specific Drive is a first-person survival game that revolves around cars. On paper, this game might remind players of the hilariously entertaining game, The Long Drive. In Pacific Drive, the goal is to escape while avoiding hazards and anomalies. The players don't have to drive if they don't choose to, but if they do, they'll have a trusty station wagon waiting for them. Specific Drive's auto shop functions as a safe space for players where they can customize their vehicle with any bits and bobbles they find during their adventures. The game has an incredible atmosphere and some great mechanics that have earned it much praise. However, the difficult gameplay becomes repetitive after a while. Returnal was one of the first games released for the PS5 only. To no one's surprise, it's a gorgeous game with riveting gameplay. This third-person shooter is a painfully difficult bullet hell dungeon-style game that relies on many resets. Being a roguelike game, players never know exactly what they'll encounter in this alien world. The story slowly unfolds as the players make progress, and with each reset, players can discover more. This game requires precision, skill, and, most importantly, patience. Like all roguelikes, failure is simply a part of Returnal's process. While the game can feel obnoxiously hard at times, players should take the time to learn the mechanics and enemy behaviors. This isn't a game for everyone, but anyone who enjoys the nail-biting nature of games will find Returnal worth diving into. Astro Bot has become the new mascot for Sony, but what about its previous mascot, Sackboy? The very expressive and customizable star of the Little Big Planet series did get one last game before Astro Bot fully took over with Sackboy: A Big Adventure. A launch title on PlayStation 5, Sackbot: A Big Adventure, isn't a 2D platformer like its predecessors, instead opting for the 3D platformer route, much like Astro Bot. Sackboy: A Big Adventure may not have the creation suite Little Big Planet was known for, but it does feature co-op with up to 4 players, locally and online. Even though it's since been overshadowed by Astro Bot, Sackboy: A Big Adventure was received well at release, with 84% of critics recommending it on OpenCritic. It was also successful enough to be one of a select handful of PlayStation titles to see a PC release. And anyone looking for another 3D platformer after playing Astro Bot should give this fun and underrated game a chance. Anyone who wished Astro's Playroom was a full game got their wish with Astro Bot. Astro Bot takes the framework of Playroom and builds a fully fledged 3D platformer. Beyond the cute aesthetic and PlayStation nostalgia, Astro Bot is a marvelous game. Fans of Mario's 3D outing can find plenty of inspiration in Astro Bot's levels and gameplay. Even then, it still manages to one-up Mario in plenty of ways through its power-ups, rumble features, visuals, and audio. So, players who lament the current state of gaming need to play Astro Bot, as it's a reminder of why many of us began gaming in the first place. It's pure fun with intuitive controls and without all the intrusive microtransactions and cut corners. It's tough to not have a smile through the playthrough and collecting all the cameo bots. Despite a stacked year in gaming, Astro Bot persevered and won the Game of the Year award at the Game Awards 2024. Astro Bot's reception, accolades, and overall success have led it to be considered one of the greatest platformers ever made, and it deserves every ounce of that praise. The PS5 has a slew of new mechanics and features it showcased via Astro's Playroom. For any PS5 owners who have decided not to check out the game, they certainly should. This game isn't just a wordy tutorial that players force themselves to push through. It's a highly interactive and entertaining platformer. Cute little mascot Astro aside, Astro's Playroom is an incredible way to show off the features of the PS5. Mostly the DualSense controller. It has to be one of the more creative ways a company has implemented to give people a tour. Of course, people buy consoles to play video games. There's no better way to let players get a feel for their new controllers than a proper video game. Astro's Playroom is free with the PS5 console, and it's a perfect casual for anyone who needs to refresh their palates after hours of the same games. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection is the most recent Uncharted release. The now dormant gaming franchise saw a perfect conclusion with Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, and its expansion turned standalone Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Legacy of Thieves bundles those two games together with improved visuals and up to 120 feet frame rate. A Thief's End sees primary franchise lead Nathan Drake mostly enjoying retirement despite the frequent desire for one last adventure. The Swifty washed as lead, the actual word double tape is called the Swifty flops. And Drake gets his wish when his long thought to be dead brother shows up with leads on a lost pirate city. The Lost Legacy shifts the protagonist mantle to Chloe Fraser, who is in pursuit of the Tusk of Ganesh, which is deeply personal to her since her father's search for the artifact led to his demise. Legacy of Thieves may not have remastered A Thieves' End's multiplayer mode, but it's still the best way to play both single-player experiences. So, the Gran Turismo series was once an absolute force. Its games were often among the best-selling games in each PlayStation console generation. However, the franchise has sputtered across the track and overtaken, if not lapped, by the Forza series. It may have taken some time in the shop, but the Gran Turismo franchise is back on the right track with Gran Turismo 7. Even though GT7 is a fantastic racing experience now, after nearly 3 years of updates and additions, it's best experienced in VR through PlayStation VR 2. It is one of the best VR experiences ever, and once players try it out, they may never want to play GT7 outside of VR. For players who may be intimidated by Gran Turismo's historically skill-dependent gameplay, Polyphony Digital recently released My First Gran Turismo, a free beginner-friendly way to learn how to play Gran Turismo with the ability to carry over progress to GT7. So GT7, in an age of remakes with the Resident Evil franchise leading the way, it was only a matter of time before Konami gave the Silent Hill series the same degree of love. The remake of arguably one of the best horror video games ever made, Silent Hill 2, serves as a welcome back for the Silent Hill franchise. Is the first main Silent Hill game since 2012's Silent Hill Downpour amid the cancellation of the Hideo Kojima-directed Silent Hills, which was introduced through the viral interactive teaser. Developed by Blooper Team, the Silent Hill 2 remake carries over the sights, sounds, and horrors of the original game. Players are reacquainted with James Sunderland as he makes the trek to the fog-filled town after receiving a mysterious letter from his wife, who has long been dead. And the Silent Hill 2 remake proved to be a huge success, both critically and financially, selling over 1 million copies within the first 4 days of its release, faster than any previous game in the franchise. Players looking for a PS5 exclusive horror game should look no further than Silent Hill 2. God of War Ragnarok picks up in the middle of the coldest winter Midgard has ever faced. Several years have passed in Ragnarok since the events of 2018's God of War, and Kratos still lives in his woodland cabin with his son Atreus. Based on the ending of the 2018 game, the name of the game, and the harsh winter that has crept over the land, players know they are about to be thrown into Ragnarok, a cycle that will destroy everything and make room for rebirth. God of War Ragnarok is a long game. To do 100% of the game, players must dedicate almost 55 hours to exploring everything, but nothing feels wasteful. Ragnarok's lore, story, character development, and world building are as incredible as the gameplay and graphics. The game also received a free roguelike DLC in December 2023 called Valhalla. Many gamers and critics agree that Ragnarok is one of the best games of the modern era. Horizon Forbidden West might have received a PS4 release, but the game was built for the PS5. Few games highlight what the console is capable of better than Guerrilla Games' sequel. Everything from the graphics to the fluid combat and traversal gameplay is extremely polished. The game received high praise for its mechanics and graphics, and Horizon Forbidden West also received a PS5 exclusive DLC called Burning Shores in April 2023. Horizon Forbidden West picks up after the first game, with Aloy searching for a backup of Gaia. If Aloy finds a working backup, she can use it to help fix the planet's biosphere. Sylens suggests that Aloy continue her search in the Forbidden West. Desperate for anything that will help save her planet, Aloy agrees, but the turmoil that awaits her in the West is like nothing she's ever faced before. If Final Fantasy XVI is one of the best PlayStation 5 exclusives out there, it goes without saying that the newest Final Fantasy installment would follow suit. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a direct sequel to Remake, and it's the second game in the trilogy. The trilogy will completely remake the 1997 version of Final Fantasy VII. Cloud is a mercenary who lends his talents to Avalanche, an eco-terrorist group that wants to protect the planet from the Shinra Electric Power Company. Shinra is running the planet dry in its quest for power. Cloud and his friends set out on an epic journey to put a stop to Shinra's control. While Remake and Rebirth are part of a trilogy remaking the P-Zone classic from 1997, it's more of a reimagining than a faithful remake. The Last of Us is one of Naughty Dog's most successful franchises. Both games have received commercial success and critical acclaim. These acclaimed narrative-heavy games did incredibly well, but neither were built for the PS5. Naughty Dog changed that by remaking The Last of Us from the ground up, while remastering The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Remake and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered are fundamentally the same games as the original. Even so, players can experience the story and survival horror mechanics of the original games with high-definition graphics and the performance of the PS5. Both games follow Ellie, a teenager immune to the cordyceps virus. In the original game, she bonds with Joel during their trip across the country to deliver Ellie to a group of doctors who want to use her to create a cure. Together, Ellie and Joel face the world's worst traumas.